Roanoke Island, August 1590. A ship cuts through the warm coastal waters off present-day North Carolina, its crew scanning the shoreline for any sign of life. On deck stands John White, a man who has waited 3 years for this moment. 3 years of frustration, of political delays, of imagining the reunion with his daughter, his granddaughter, and the 115 men, women, and children he left behind. The ship anchors. White and his men row toward the beach. Smoke rises from the tree line. A signal fire. They're here. They have to be here. But when John White steps onto the sand, he finds nothing. No greeting party, no children running to the shore, no voices calling through the trees. Just an abandoned settlement, a single word carved into a wooden post, and a mystery that has now survived more than 400 years of scrutiny, speculation, and silence. What happened to the colony of Roanoke? What made an entire settlement of English men, women, and children vanish without a trace? And what if the answer has been sitting in plain sight, carved into a piece of wood, this entire time? The disappearance of the Roanoke colony isn't just the oldest unsolved mystery in American history. It's a story about how badly we need answers, how easily we fill empty spaces with monsters, and how sometimes the truth is quieter than the theories we build around it. Tonight, we're walking through every piece of this case. The expeditions, the characters, the cryptic clues, the centuries of speculation, and the archaeological discoveries that may finally explain what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke. To understand what vanished, we first need to understand what was built. Our story begins not on Roanoke Island, but in London, 1584. England under Queen Elizabeth I is a nation watching the world from the sidelines. Spain has conquered vast territories in the Americas. The Spanish treasure fleets carry gold, silver, and resources back to Europe on a scale that makes the English court ache with envy. Sir Walter Raleigh, a charismatic courtier and favorite of the Queen, receives a charter to establish an English presence in North America, a base from which to challenge Spanish dominance, to explore, and to stake a claim on a continent that most Englishmen have never seen. Raleigh dispatches an expedition to scout the coast. The reports that come back describe a land of remarkable abundance. The soil is fertile. The forests are thick with timber. The waters teem with fish. The native peoples they encounter, the Sakatan, the Croatoan, are described as friendly, curious, willing to trade. One location in particular catches the expedition's attention: a small island tucked behind the Outer Banks, protected from the open Atlantic by barrier islands, accessible only through narrow inlets. The Croatoan people call it something long since lost to history. The English will name it Roanoke. In 1585, Raleigh sends a military expedition, not a colony, not yet, to establish a foothold. 107 men under the command of Sir Richard Grenville. Among them is a painter and cartographer named John White, an artist whose watercolors of the Algonquian people, their villages, their ceremonies, their way of life, will become some of the most valuable ethnographic records of pre-colonial North America ever created. White documents everything: the way they fish, the way they build their homes, the way they dance. His paintings are precise, respectful, almost tender. He is not just an observer. He is a man genuinely fascinated by the world he's entering. But the military expedition does not go well. Relations with the local tribes deteriorate. The English demand food from communities that have only enough for themselves. When a silver cup goes missing, Grenville burns an entire village in retaliation. The leader of the Sikhotan people, a chief named Wingina, begins to understand what kind of neighbors have arrived on his shores. By the spring of 1586, the situation has become untenable. When Sir Francis Drake happens to stop at Roanoke on his way back from raiding Spanish ports, the desperate colonists abandon the settlement and sail home with him. The English have now tried and failed to establish a foothold on Roanoke Island. Most nations would take the hint, but Raleigh has a different vision. The next attempt, he decides, will not be a military outpost. It will be a proper colony, families, farmers, craftsmen, people who will put down roots and stay. In May of 1587, John White, now appointed governor, leads a group of 115 settlers across the Atlantic. Among them are his pregnant daughter, Eleanor Dare, and her husband, Ananias. The plan is straightforward. Stop at Roanoke to pick up the small garrison that was left behind, then continue north to the Chesapeake Bay, where deeper harbors and more fertile land await. But when they reach Roanoke, the plan begins to unravel. The garrison is gone. The fort has been abandoned and partially dismantled. Bones are found near the settlement, the remains of one of the 15 men left behind. The pilot of the ship, a man named Simon Fernandez, refuses to take them any further. He orders the settlers off the ship and onto the island. John White protests. Fernandez ignores him. Whether this was malice, impatience, or something more calculated remains unclear, but the result is the same. The colony of Roanoke will be built not in the welcoming harbors of the Chesapeake, but on the same island that has already swallowed one English expedition. They make the best of it. They repair the existing structures, build new homes, establish relations with the Croatoan people on Hatteras Island to the south. On August 18th, 1587, Eleanor Dare gives birth to a daughter. They name her Virginia, the first English child born in the Americas. But the colony is fragile. Supplies are running low. The colonists are not farmers by trade. Many are middle-class Londoners with no experience growing food in an unfamiliar climate. The local tribes, still scarred by the violence of the 1585 expedition, are wary. The colonists make a desperate decision. They send John White back to England to bring supplies. He will return as quickly as possible. A few months, 6 at most. White does not want to go. He is the governor. His daughter and granddaughter are here, but the settlers have no other choice. He boards the ship, watches the island recede into the distance, and tells himself he will be back before winter. He does not return for 3 years. What happened in England is one of the cruelest ironies in the history of exploration. White arrives to find his nation preparing for war. The Spanish Armada, a fleet of 130 ships, is assembling to invade England. Every available vessel is commandeered for defense. The Queen issues an order. No English ship may leave port. White spends months pleading, negotiating, writing letters that go unanswered. By the time the Armada is defeated in 1588, the window for a crossing has closed. The Atlantic in winter is suicide. It is not until August of 1590, exactly 3 years to the day since Virginia Dare drew her first breath, that John White finally steps back onto the shores of Roanoke Island. Think about that. 3 years. His granddaughter is now a toddler he has never met. His daughter has been raising a child in a wilderness settlement with dwindling supplies and uncertain neighbors. Every day of those 3 years, White must have imagined this moment. The embrace, the relief, the apology for taking so long. What he finds instead is a ghost town. The houses have been dismantled, not destroyed. The timbers carefully removed rather than broken, as if the settlers had time, as if they planned to use them elsewhere. A defensive palisade has been built around the settlement, something that wasn't there when White left. Barrels and chests that were too heavy to carry have been buried in shallow trenches, their contents removed. There are no bodies, no signs of violence, no evidence of a hasty departure. And carved into a wooden post at the entrance to the settlement, one single word: Croatoan. On a nearby tree, White finds 3 more letters: C-R-O. Between the 2 carvings, a message begins to form. One that White, who knows the geography of this coast, better than almost any Englishman alive, understands immediately. Croatoan is the name of a nearby island. It is also the name of the people who live there, the same people who befriended the 1585 expedition, the same people John White painted in his watercolors, the same people who had offered the colonists friendship and support. But here's the strange part. Before White left for England, he and the colonists had agreed on a distress signal. If they were forced to leave the island under threat, if they were being attacked, if they were fleeing danger, they would carve the name of their destination into a tree or a post, and they would add a cross above it. A cross meant danger. A cross meant this was not their choice. The word carved into the post at Roanoke has no cross. White is flooded with relief. They're alive, he thinks. They're with the Croatoan. They're safe. He orders his men to prepare the ship. They will set sail for Hatteras Island at first light. Then the weather turns. A hurricane barrels up the coast. The ship drags its anchor, nearly smashes against the rocks. The crew, exhausted and terrified, refuses to continue. They sail out to sea, heading for the Caribbean to make repairs, and John White stands on the deck watching Roanoke, and Hatteras, and his daughter, and his granddaughter, and the answer to the mystery disappear over the horizon. He will never return. This is the moment the mystery is born. Not when the colony vanished, but when the one man who might have found them was stopped by weather, by fear, by a chain of circumstances so improbably cruel that it almost feels scripted. White spends the rest of his life in England, writing letters, trying to mount another expedition, never succeeding. In one of his last surviving letters, he writes, "I am grieved to the heart." He dies in obscurity, never knowing what happened to his family, never reaching Hatteras Island, never reading the message that was carved into a post for him and him alone. The colony of Roanoke is never found. No rescue mission locates them. No English ship makes contact. Over the following decades, reports trickle back from explorers, from traders, from native informants, fragments of a story that nobody can quite confirm. English-speaking native children spotted in coastal villages, gray-eyed people living in stone houses inland, a strange group of Europeans living among the Tuscarora, but nothing definitive, nothing that closes the book, and so the speculation begins. For more than 400 years, the disappearance of the Roanoke colony has been a blank canvas, and wherever information is limited, as we have seen before, theories tend to fill the gaps. Theory 1, Croatoan integration. The first theory, and the one John White himself believed, is the simplest. The colonists left Roanoke Island voluntarily and integrated with the Croatoan people on Hatteras Island. This is what the carving told White to do. This is what the absence of a cross above the carving implied. The Croatoan were allies. They had the resources and knowledge to survive on this coast that the English settlers so clearly lacked. The colonists dismantled their houses rather than abandoning them, buried their heavy equipment rather than destroying it, and left a clear message about where they were going. This is not the behavior of people fleeing in terror. This is the behavior of people executing a plan. Theory 2, Massacre. The second theory is darker. The colonists were massacred, either by hostile native tribes or by the Spanish, who maintained a presence in Florida and viewed any English settlement in the Americas as a threat. What gives this theory weight is the confession of Chief Powhatan. When Jamestown was established in 1607, John Smith and other leaders actively searched for survivors. According to Powhatan, the colonists had been living peacefully with a coastal tribe for many years, until Powhatan himself, fearing they had become too powerful, ordered their execution. He claimed to have killed them personally. But here's the strange part. The absence of bodies, the absence of signs of struggle, the careful removal of valuable items. None of this fits a massacre. And if Powhatan killed the colonists, the timing doesn't align with reported sightings of gray-eyed native children and English-speaking villagers decades later. Theory 3. The Dare Stones and Inland Migration. A third theory emerged in the 20th century. The colonists attempted to move inland, up the Chowan River, and were absorbed into the Tuscarora or other Iroquoian-speaking tribes. This theory gained traction in the 1930s when a series of stones began appearing across the Carolinas, supposedly inscribed by Eleanor Dare herself. The Dare stones were a sensation. 48 stones were discovered over several years. Then the forgeries were exposed. But the inland migration theory survived because alongside the frauds, archaeologists were finding something real. In the 1990s, archaeologist Ivor Noel Hume and his team began excavating sites along the Chowan River. What they found was fragments, pottery, European metal artifacts in native village layers. Then, in 2012, the First Colony Foundation began excavating Site X. They found English pottery, fragments of borderware manufactured in Surrey in the late 1500s, a 16th century writing slate with traces of writing still visible, copper aglets, the decorative metal tips of shoelaces worn by English men, what appeared to be the site of a small settlement, perhaps 50 miles inland from Roanoke Island. Suddenly, the inland migration theory wasn't just folklore, it was archaeology. But while archaeologists were digging inland, another team was looking toward Hatteras Island. The Croatoan Archaeological Society began excavating sites identified as Croatoan villages contemporary with the Roanoke colony. What they found: a 16th century English sword hilt, fragments of a snap-haunce gun, copper ingots worked by native craftsmen, a signet ring bearing a crest connected to the Roanoke expedition. These objects were not trade goods. These were the possessions of English settlers, found in native village sites, incorporated into native material culture. The colonists hadn't just visited Hatteras Island. They had lived there. They had become part of the community. Think about that. The answer was carved into a post in plain English, 430 years ago. Croatoan, no cross, no distress signal, a destination. So after 430 years of speculation, what really happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? The most likely answer, supported by the archaeological evidence, the historical record, and the message the colonists themselves left behind, is this. The colony did not disappear in a single catastrophic event. It dissolved over time, through decision, not disaster. Facing dwindling supplies and the realization that John White was not returning, the colonists made a calculated choice. A portion of the group moved south to Hatteras Island to live among the Croatoan, their closest allies, the people whose name they carved into a post as their forwarding address. Another portion, perhaps a smaller group, moved inland up the Chowan River, establishing a small settlement at what is now called Site X, where they attempted to survive independently until they too were eventually absorbed into the native communities of the interior. There was no single massacre, no epidemic that wiped them out, no supernatural force that swallowed the settlement whole. There was a slow, pragmatic, deeply human process of adaptation. English men and women learning to live in a world they were not prepared for, making alliances with people who understood that world, and gradually ceasing to be a distinct colony at all. The greatest mystery of Roanoke may not be what happened to the 115 men, women, and children who stepped onto that island in 1587. The greatest mystery is how we spent 4 centuries building elaborate theories, alien abductions, ancient curses, zombie epidemics, every fantasy the human imagination could conjure, when the answer was carved into a post in a single word, left by people who trusted that someone would read it and understand. Because Roanoke reminds us that sometimes the truth is quieter than the theories, that a colony does not have to be massacred to be lost. It just has to become someone else, and that the line between vanished and transformed is thinner than we think. It's the line between a mystery and a migration, between an ending and a beginning that nobody was left to write down. And perhaps, in the end, the colonists of Roanoke were not lost at all. They were simply no longer where the English expected them to be. The message was there. The cross was absent. The path was clear. It just took 400 years for anyone to follow it.